For over 15 years, Saturdays and Illegal Curve have been synonymous with one another. With insight, analysis, and interviews regarding the Winnipeg Jets, the Manitoba Moose, and all around the NHL, here are Dave Manouk, Ezra Ginsberg, and your host, Drew Mindell. The Illegal Curve Hockey Show, presented by Play Now, the official sports betting partner of the Winnipeg Jets, starts now.
Alrighty, the day before Game 7, nothing better than those two words. Maybe Jets fans would have preferred series victory as the two words they're hearing this morning. But say la vie, it is the day before Game 7 tomorrow between the Jets and the Blues. Good morning, Winnipeg. Good morning, Manitoba. For all those joining us live this morning on our YouTube channel and all of our social media platforms, we say good morning, universe, and welcome to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Along with Dave Manouk, along with Ezra Ginsberg, I'm your host, Drew Mindell, here for 2 hours to talk about the Jets, to talk about the Blues, to get you Game 7 ready. That'll be tomorrow, 6 o'clock. We're also at City Place tomorrow. Pre-game show, 4 o'clock. Post-game show, after the game, celebrating or in dismay at the end of the Winnipeg Jets season. Time will tell as to which it is. Gentlemen, great to see you both on this Saturday morning.
Great to see you, boys. I like the Big Spence 17 energy right now. I like the vibes coming from the comment from Big Spence 17. He says, we're going to be fine. Bring on Game 7. That's why you play 82 games home ice advantage, right? Obviously, guys, we're going to talk about last night's debacle. I think we can call it that. It wasn't just a game. It was a terrible loss. Obviously, the Jets having the opportunity to close out the series and failing to do so, losing their third straight game at Enterprise Center. But as Drew says, we're going to try to focus more so on the positivity of a home game, Game 7 tomorrow night. But obviously, we're going to also have to talk about last night's game because Connor Hellebuyck's got to be better, and the entire team in front of him has to be better if they're going to finish off the Blues in this series.
The most amazing thing is that, based on the season we just witnessed, as you pointed out, Ezzy, like 82 games of Jets hockey where they were a dominant team. They were the best team in the NHL, one of the best home teams, not the best, but one of the best home teams, top 5 at least, and the best road team. So, and sure, you got to give St. Louis credit. We do. It's funny how someone called us a homer yesterday. I was like, what show are you watching? If you think we're giving homer takes, you're really not watching our show. But you have to credit the Blues. I mean, they've been phenomenal at home, 14, 15 straight wins on home ice. They're a very good home team. There's no question about it. But the fact of the matter is, and they're a good team, period. The fact of the matter is that when you looked at what the numbers for Connor Hellebuyck have been, and I saw our friend, of course, Connor Hapchak, retweeted, I think it was Mike Kelly, someone, but when you looked at the goalie's numbers, it was almost shocking to see, if the Jets were just getting, league average goaltending in this series, what it would be. And again, I'm not going to blame all of this on 37. He's got to be better. He could not let that third goal in 54 seconds after the second goal. I don't blame him for the second goal. We talked about it last night. Like Nino Niederreiter doing a fly by Nathan Walker doesn't help anyone out, especially their goaltender. And of course, there's a number of guys who are in my mind need to be better. I mean, again, like I said, if you're healthy enough to play, then you need to be better. And like guys like Gabriel Velarde, I mean, he was kind of invisible for most of that game yesterday. Kyle Connor, you have to step up because you don't have Mark Scheifele. Again, Nikolai Ehlers, after missing, 2.5 weeks, 3 weeks, or whatever it was since he got injured in Chicago, he was noticeable. But there's just too many guys who are just not bringing that presence. So, I will say it was a collective loss because the Jets didn't do what they have been known for doing, which is being defensively responsible. I mean, they get praised. Again, I saw it in the comment. Someone said it's like this team is schizophrenic. You don't know what team you're going to get, whether they're that team we saw last night or the team we saw in Game 5. And my inclination
not a word I would like to use, by the way. That's not really
well, I'm just saying
appropriate. It's not respectful to people that actually have schizophrenia, but
fine. What can I say? Chaotic then. Is that fair? As a little
there's a lot of words that that I can find to describe. Yeah, I mean inconsistent, erratic.
Fine. I was going based on the comment, but you're right. Fine. I'm sorry for
no. I'm not. I wasn't
No,
I know you were
you're right. You're right. Because I mean, honestly, when people call someone a cancer in the room, I often hate that expression. I think it's inappropriate to use that word when referencing someone in a dressing room. So you're right. I again, like I said, inconsistent would have been fine, or even Jekyll and Hyde would have been fine. So, but the fact of the matter is that what we're seeing from this team right now is not a team that looks like a Stanley Cup champion. We're looking like, and again, we have to acknowledge that Mark Scheifele was missing as well. But ultimately, at the end of the day, this team has to look at themselves in the mirror today. They're going to do a media availability at 1:00. And again, regardless of what they tell us, words are words, boys, and actions live louder than words. And this team will be judged based on their actions tomorrow after late afternoon, early evening.
Connor Hellebuyck at home, forget about the road, save percentage is the Nathan Wright home, about .879. The goals against average 2.33. Respectable on the road. What can you take from that? What can the Jets take from that 2.33 goals against average at home? Is that give them an element of confidence? We talked about it last night. The road games have been another disaster, no question. But frankly, if the Jets hold court at home, they're going to be the Stanley Cup champion. That's all they'd have to do. They'd have to win their home games. Who cares if they lose the road games? They have the home ice advantage. It's unlikely to happen that you're never going to lose at home, or that you're not going to need a win on the road. So, the tongue in cheek when I say that. But that 2.33 goals against average, how much can you sort of use that as a stabilizing, as a feeling of stability entering tomorrow's Game 7?
You have to use it, boys. I mean, the Jets have been awful. Like, what have they been outscored? What is it? 17-5 in 3 games? Like, think about that for a second. Like, Drew compared it to the 1960 World Series when the Yankees won the close games at home, and then the Pirates, I forget who won was it the Yankees or the Pirates that
the
won?
Pirates won 4 games.
The Pirates
to 3.
won. The Pirates won. But
they won 4 close games. The Yankees won 3 blowouts.
So what Drew was trying to do there by providing a good comparison, or a good example of a series that's just completely chaotic, like Dave was just saying, if the Jets can be the Pittsburgh Pirates, then they're going to be okay. Just win your home games. And it's like you said, Drew, the goals against average, which is a team stat, by the way, it is much better at home. And, as Dave has pointed out throughout this series, the Jets were not only one of the best home teams in the league, or I forget if they had the best home record. Probably,
I think Carolina and
Carolina. So they were second, but
I think
the point being
I think LA was ahead of them too.
And they had the best road record, right?
Yeah.
So second best home record and best home record. Pardon me, road record. If I can get my home and road okay, guys here. The point is, they're not playing like a President's Trophy winning team. They have been way too inconsistent on the road for anybody's liking, and I think you have to, grasp onto that, because at this point, I mean, the Jets know they have the boost from the 15,000 plus whiteout crowd and the thousands of people that are going to be watching at the whiteout street party, and that's a huge advantage for the Jets. So I think you have to. It's just been a weird series in that sense, right? Like it's hard to really analyze game to game. It's hard to bring too much from game to game because you see a different team on home ice than you do on the road. And St. Louis plays differently. And I think St. Louis plays differently at home as well. I mean, they play a much more confident game. And look, Hellebuyck has to be better, guys. Like there's no sugarcoating this. It's not 1 or 2 games now. We're 6 games into the series, and Hellebuyck has only had 1 good game, in my opinion, and that was game 2. I keep bringing that up. That was the win. Was it 2-1 or 3-2? I forget what the score was. Feels like game 2 was like 2 weeks ago.
It was 3-1 if I recall correctly.
Yeah, so that was Hellebuyck's best game, and he's got to be better, but the defense in front of him's got to be better. I mean, we talked about all the goals. I mean, there was some really porous defensive coverage from the Jets last night. I'm not as worried about them offensively, Dave. Like, it's what I saw defensively that bothered me, and I realize there's some people that are calling for Colin Miller to come into the lineup. I have time to listen to that. But it's top to bottom. Like Josh Morrissey's got to be better. That top pair with DeMello and Morrissey's got to be better. Samberg and Pionk have got to be better. This is the biggest game of the year. You talk about franchise-defining game 5. Well, if that was a franchise-defining game, this is the next franchise-defining game, guys. Like they have to get out of the first round here. It'll be a complete waste of a President's Trophy winning season.
I think you make a good point, though, Ezzy, that you can't really extrapolate anything in this series from one game to the next. They have been they've all been their own chapter in a book, but the book is a choose your own adventure. So there is no consistency from one game to the next. So, game 3 and 4 obviously were terrible for the Winnipeg Jets in St. Louis. They come back, they win game 5. They play a very good game 5. They win that one. Terrible game 6. It's shrug your shoulders emoji guy for what team and what is going to happen in this game 7. Now, I mean, I think it's essential. Clearly the Jets are the more fragile of the two teams.
Yeah.
I don't think that can be disputed. St. Louis, has not displayed any element of the fragility that the Jets have demonstrated ad nauseum during this series. So I think from the Jets' perspective, you get down a goal tomorrow, 2 goals, it might be sayonara. I just don't know that the Jets have the resolve within them to fight back from a deficit, especially if those goals are softies. Then you have to wonder about the psychological impact of everything that's going around with this team, with the goaltending, with the porous defensive play that has been the opposite of what we've seen this year. But at the same time, I think that the Jets are probably well aware that it's a blank slate. What's happened in the first 6 games is relatively inconsequential at this point, minus the injury to Mark Scheifele. Obviously, that is hugely consequential, and I don't think that any of us are expecting him to be in the lineup tomorrow. But then again, nobody was expecting Nikolai Ehlers to be in the lineup yesterday, so I'm not going to say no for sure, because stranger things have clearly happened.
Well, and
it's
correct me if I'm wrong, boys. Sorry, I was going to say, correct me if I'm wrong. We still don't know if it's concussion.
I mean, we don't know officially, but
right.
I mean, you can read the tea leaves pretty clearly. I don't want to speculate. I'm not Jim Montgomery. I don't have my MD, but
you will take a look, though.
Yeah, I will always take a look. But I just don't. I mean, it's hard to believe that it's anything other than that, given how quickly he was ruled out and that he was he wasn't on the plane and things of that nature.
The only other thing I thought, Dave, is it could have been like shoulder or upper body or something.
The only reason, again, I'm leaning more towards Drew is just because of what Arniel said. We want to see how he woke up and felt.
Yeah.
But I mean, again, but again, to be clear, it just as easily could have been that something was sore and he wanted to see how he felt the next day.
Yeah,
so,
but I think
again, the reality is it doesn't really make a difference. It doesn't make a difference. All we need to think about is that Mark Scheifele didn't play game 6 and he's a question mark for game 7. Like, whether we go into the detail of what it's going to be, doesn't add anything to the conversation. Ultimately, you just have to focus on the fact that, as Jim Rutherford referenced them, as whether 55 will be in the lineup or not. That's it. And again, like I said, they're having a media availability at 1. We're not going to get any insight unless he's playing. If he's playing, then I suspect they'll say, but they may not. They may not. They may want to just, again, we've seen a lot of gamesmanship, boys. So I could see them just keeping it. Mum's the word.
No, I think you're absolutely right. And I was just going to say here, Drew, like, if there's one thing, that's clearly obvious that you're rallying around here, guys, is that 55 is out. And the fact that you won the first 2 games of the series without Gabriel Velarde and without Nikolai Ehlers. So this Jets team is capable of beating this Blues team multiple times without Ehlers and or Velarde in the lineup, right? So again, is Vladislav Nemesnikov Mark Scheifele? No. And is it a huge drop-off? Of course it is. There would be a huge drop-off for most teams' first-line center to their second-line center, right? Maybe not, so much maybe the Colorado Avalanche or the Dallas Stars, but certainly in Winnipeg.
David and Draisaitl.
Well, exactly, or Edmonton, right? But they have to pick up for the lack of 55 in the lineup. Obviously, we're going to go currently on the assumption that he's not going to be playing, but I think that's what you're rallying around, guys. In addition to the fact that you want to slay those first-round demons, right? Like, if you're the Jets, I mean, it's not like someone has to remind the Jets the last 2 seasons you've been knocked out in the first round. They're very aware of that, guys. So this is a monumentally important game to steal a Drewism. Game 5 was huge, but this is even bigger. This is literally your season on the line here.
Well, and you're not going to be able to rest on your laurels and say, well, you know what? Hey, we didn't go out in the same fashion we went out the 2 previous rounds, so at least there's that.
Yeah.
I mean, you're right.
We got our owners 2 more home games.
Yes.
Yay!
Yeah. No, I mean, the bottom line is that this is, as I've said, but you have to look in the mirror and you have to decide what you're going to be, because this is going to be a little bit of a franchise defining game. And I don't try and be too hyperbolic and put too much on it. But I mean,
you know what, Dave? We should almost call it like a core defining game, like the core of this team, like
Yeah.
Scheifele, Connor, Morrissey, Hellebuck, Lowry.
But I don't
I
think
mean,
you
like
can
this
say that,
is.
'cause I don't think you can say that. Sorry, Ezzy, because the core isn't going anywhere. These guys are
well,
all fine.
no, but it's still defining
No,
who
but
they
what,
are.
I'm not saying that
agree
this
with
is the
Ezzy.
last time the Jets are going to have an opportunity to win the Stanley Cup. I'm just saying, like, what better year is their year for this core to make a run, right? Like, you look at, I mean, how many teams left are the Jets really afraid of? I think Dallas and Colorado are going to, Dallas or Colorado will be a big challenge, but like, goes back to what Dave said. You won the President's Trophy this year. Like, you have just as good a chance this year to win a cup as you will ever have.
I think you did before this series started. I think the cumulative effect of this series for both the Jets and the Blues are going to make them relatively easy fodder for whomever they play in the second round. You watch that Dallas-Colorado series, they're playing at a higher level than the Jets and the Blues because the Jets and the Blues have just been focused on beating the living hell out of each other. The Dallas and Colorado series have been far more skill-based, speed-based than they have been physical. And I don't know that you can go seamlessly from a ruthless aggression series like this one has been to a skill series like the next one would be so simply. I just don't know that these 7 games that the Jets and the Blues are playing are far more like 10 games than the 7 games that the Avs and the Stars are playing with Game 7 later tonight. That I do think is the case, and I think that these two teams have been softened up significantly for later rounds.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I said yesterday, right? I said that this feels like Nashville in 2017-18, where they beat the crap out of each other, and you know, you go to take on Vegas, and there's not a lot left in the tank. And so, again, the truth of this, as you know, I don't want to steal a Scott Arniel-ism, but you can't even think about the second round right now. You can't worry about what you're going to be able to do. You have to get there. And so, as we were just saying, and I'm with Ez, like, it is going to define this core, regardless of, again, these guys are banged up. There's no question. Like Adam Lowry, I do wonder if that the hit by Schenn, it was at Game 1 or Game 2 where he just got walloped when he got blindsided by him. You know, really kind of seemed to knock him. He still continued to play in the game, but that was a big boy hit by Schenn on Lowry. So, but you know, at the end of the day, you know, you're the captain. You have to bring your team into the fight. Connor Hellebuck, you don't wear a letter. But you signed the big deal. You want to be the man. You want to be regarded. And again, like, he wasn't bad in the Four Nations championship game. I mean, he got beat by Connor McDavid, pretty good player there. But at the same time, like, you know, it's going to be a challenge, you know, you versus Binnington. And so it's going to be a kind of a rematch of that one, as he not quite the same caliber of players in front of them. But at the same time, like, you have to be the best goaltender in the world. You have to steal the game. Like, at the bottom line is, regardless of how your team plays in front of you, you have to be the guy. I mean, again, like I said this last night, I don't change my opinion. You can't win your third Vezina, which everybody agrees he's going to win. You can't be a Hart finalist and then fold in this manner. So again, like, the power positivity, whatever you want to talk about, like, he's got to reset in some capacity and figure it out. Because again, like I said, I don't care what they do the rest of the series. Tomorrow's game, or the rest of the playoffs, I should say, because again, if they advance, they're gonna, you know, we'll figure out. We'll start talking about the second round if they do that, boys. But for now, all your focus is on Game 7 and how you guys can define yourselves. And again, like I said, anybody who tries to pretend like St. Louis is some bad team who was lucky to get in the playoffs, they were one of the best teams in the NHL for 2 months. That's not by accident. That wasn't a mirage. They're very well coached.
We all underestimated how good the Blues were. That's for sure.
Well, certainly my prediction of Jets in 5 looks that way.
No, but I'm talking more so like before the regular season started, Dave.
Well, it's a completely different team. You can't even compare the team.
No, that's what I mean. That's what I mean. Like, I think most people had the Blues as like the 5th best team in the Central. The 6th best team.
Positive of what can happen with a coaching change. Obviously, Drew Bannister was in over his head as head coach of the St. Louis Blues, and Jim Montgomery was able to tap into whatever it is that Bannister wasn't able to adjust and turn this team completely around. Also, credit to the Blues and the for that Cam Fowler acquisition.
I was going to say the Cam Fowler trade hasn't hurt either.
No, and they did that early. They did that when, in January, if I recall correctly.
It was December, but yeah.
Okay, even so. So even earlier, they They acknowledged a weakness and they went out and they rectified it with a guy who's been an absolute perfect fit for what they needed. So
and obviously the Broberg Holloway contract offers,
in the
right?
offseason.
Offer sheet, sorry. I mean, Holloway had a breakout year. What did he have? 55 points or something like that. And obviously they've missed him, but it goes back to what Dave said before. You're not thinking about the Colorado Avalanche. You're not thinking about the Dallas Stars, even though I think all three of us and probably everybody watching is going to be watching Game 7 tonight. It should be a great Game 7 between those two teams. But your focus right now is winning at home and extending your season. And yes, I think, it's valid, Drew, to bring up some of the doubts that Jets fans have based on last year versus the Colorado Avalanche and the year before against the Vegas Golden Knights. But, I really do think, everything starts with Connor Hellebuyck. I think if he makes some saves early on, like we saw, was that game? Yeah, it was Game 2 when he made 4 or 5 big saves against the Blues, and then he settled in, and then he had his best game. I think a lot of how he's playing in Game 1, period 1, it's Game 7, will tell you how he's going to play the rest of the game. But there's no doubt that, guys, when Hellebuyck has struggled on the road, I mean, just think about it, right? He's been pulled 3 times in the series in 6 games. He's been pulled in all 3 road games. Nobody had that on their bingo card. Absolutely nobody did. So it starts with him. He's got to be better. But as Dave said, without 55 in the lineup, the Jets are going to have to fill that offense that they don't have with Scheifele there. I mean, it obviously helps that they've got Ehlers and Velarde back in the lineup, but everything to me starts with how they play defensively, because the St. Louis Blues have shown us, and to Drew's point, as opposed to the north-south style of hockey in the Avalanche Stars series, this has been a board battle, work your puck down low, get to the front of the net, bang in a rebound, tip shots. It's that type of series. And it starts with how the Jets play in front of Hellebuyck as well. They've got to be better, and we'll see if there's any changes. But some of those goals yesterday, I mean, the play in front of Hellebuyck, it didn't matter who was in net. They weren't stopping those.
And we'll talk about potential changes and if we expect any throughout the course of the next 90 or so minutes here on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show Saturday morning. We remind you all that the best thing for you to be doing right now, in addition to watching us, is smashing the like button. That way we know that you love everything that you're hearing, even if you don't agree with us. You love the fact that we
really need love, I think, Drew, is what you're trying to say. On the Legal Curve, that we crave others' love and affection.
But I will say, try and get along in the chat, folks. I mean, I'm seeing
it's
people
okay. As
ripping
long as
each
you
other.
guys,
No. Drew, my point
respectful.
is, that's what I just said. You got to just do it respectfully. It's not a big deal. You guys can have difference of opinions. We don't care about that, but we have difference of opinions on this show. Just do it respectfully.
The only people on this show or involved in the show that are allowed to personally insult one another are the 3 of us.
Yep.
Only we can stab each other repeatedly in the back and the front.
I was going to say, we do more in the front than we do in the back. But
that's right. In the front. In the chat, we expect you guys to at least disagree respectfully with one another. To your point, though, Ezzy, about what you were saying before, I mean, I think the defining factor in Game 7 is who wins the net front battle. That's how basically these first 6 games have been, is who wins the net front battle. Whichever team wins that aspect of the game tends to be successful at the end of the game on the score sheet. That, to me, is what you're looking for. The Jets were so good all season long at preventing the opposition from getting to the front of the net. They were very good at doing it in Game 5. They won the net front battle. That is where you have to be. You have to win that battle, and when you win that battle, hopefully Connor Hellebuyck will live up to his part about seeing pucks and stopping the pucks. Now, there's been some instances where he has seen the puck and still failed to stop it, not, overlooking those goals. You talk about the Shen goal last night. You talk about the Snuggerud goal in game 5. But if you see the puck, Connor Hellebuyck has to stop it, and the Jets have to make it so that he can see them. Whether on the flip side, Jordan Binnington can equally not see them, because that's so much of the success in this series is boiled down to that one simple, aspect of the game.
It all starts with defense. How many times has Dave M talked about this, right? The Jets allowed, 199 goals. The best defensive team in the NHL.
190, I think this year, I think 191. It was lower.
Oh,
than
sorry,
last year.
191.
Last year's number.
They weren't the best defensive Hellebuck. They were the best defensive team. Obviously, Hellebuck stops the pucks, and he deserves a big part of that. But it's like you said, Drew. It's taking care of the front of the net. Like you look at the goal, Nathan Walker's goal yesterday, the one that Broberg fed to him. I mean, like Nino Niederreiter and Gabe Vilardi, two big men are there. You just got to take care of Walker in front of the net. Like that's what you got to do. And again, it seems like, you know, we're a broken record here and always talking about this here on the show, but really that's the staple of this Jets team. They obviously can score goals, but it all starts with how they're playing in their own end. And that's why you see these uncharacteristic mistakes, like the Schenn to DeMello pass, and then DeMello, again, we're not going to, you know, beat a dead horse here.
DeMello demoralized.
Well, again, but we didn't see that during the regular season. Like we literally did not see that. DeMello was so responsible defensively. When you see stuff like that, like they just fell apart. So to Drew's point, you got to take care of home plate, but you also have to be composed. And if the Jets go down a goal, you have to know that, and you've done this so many times, right, guys? We always talk about how many times the Jets came back down a goal, right? They did it 20 plus times this year, third period comebacks, right? That's the Jets team that when they're at their best, they don't care. That doesn't affect them if they're down a goal or even a couple goals. So this is huge. I mean, it's absolutely huge. This is the season. Again, it's up to the Jets. Do you want to keep going or is your season going to be over? Only the Jets players are going to be able to answer that.
We'll find out tomorrow. Game 7, the two best words in the hockey lexicon. 6 o'clock puck drop. Here's just
I would argue that next round would be the best words for Jets fans. There, Drew,
after Game 7, those are the next two nice words. Here's just the rundown of tomorrow. Just again, we mentioned it so everyone's clear. 6 o'clock is the puck drop. Probably a couple minutes after that, we're going to be at City Place for the Illegal Curve pregame show. 4 o'clock until 5:30 tomorrow. So be sure to join us if you're heading downtown, if you're heading to the game or you're heading to one of the street parties, stop by City Place, second floor. That's where you'll find us for the Illegal Curve pregame show. And then after the game, the Illegal Curve postgame show, it'll either be celebratory or it'll be funereal. And for Jets fans, they hope it'll be celebratory. Either way, we will be there with you to guide you through whatever has happened between the Jets and the St. Louis Blues. When we return this morning on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show, Jeff Hamilton of the Winnipeg Free Press joins us. We'll talk more about the Jets and the Blues with him. That's the focus on this morning's program. No surprise there. Smash the like button, subscribe to the show, and of course, tell your friends and family that they should be tuning in to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Welcome back to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Drew Mandel, Dave Minuk, Ezra Ginsburg with you. Jeff Hamilton of the Winnipeg Free Press set to join us momentarily. We remind everybody to support all of our great sponsors. They're what make this show a possibility. Whether it is Holt Dental for your dental needs, whether it's Play Now for your betting needs, whether it's Rumors for your comedy needs, Boston Pizza, City Place, Seagram's, then the Rady JCC. These are all great sponsors of ours, and we encourage you to support them as well. Just that's our way of asking you to say thank you to them for sponsoring us. So it's all interchangeable. It all goes around. It's
the circle of life.
It's the circle of life, but I won't sing, Elton. But I appreciate the opportunity to maybe belt it out at a different date and time, talking about the Jets and the St. Louis Blues. Here comes Jeff Hamilton. So I'll also save my thoughts for after that. We welcome to the program from the Winnipeg Free Press, our good friend, Jeff Hamilton. Jeffrey, good to see you. How are things this morning?
Gentlemen, as I always say on the times I show up here, there's no better place to be on a Saturday morning than with the Illegal Curve boys breaking down what is obviously a very important series. Just a special place to be here in the morning. Glad to be
That's right,
you guys.
That's a good, we're going to use that as a quote moving forward in our promotional materials. As soon as we get some promotional materials, that is, we'll use that as a quote. Jeff, obviously, you can't put much more stock in something than say Game 7. We all know the stakes ahead of tomorrow night's game. In your memory, have you ever seen performances like we've seen between the Jets at home versus the Jets on the road and the mental fragility that they are demonstrating on the road in St. Louis?
I don't know if I can think of an identical situation or one I would directly point to. But when you ask that question, Drew, like the first thing that comes to my mind is kind of the 4-game sweep against Edmonton and then getting swept 4 games against Montreal, right? It was like, but that, I don't even know why my brain goes exactly there, but it was like you're built, you're so good in one spot, and then you have this confidence, and then you go to a different environment, in this case a different team and a whole different series, and it's just a different result. Now obviously deeper into playoffs usually means a harder opponent, a stronger opponent. I don't think many people thought that with the Montreal Canadiens at the time, but of course they fooled everybody and made it all the way to the Stanley Cup final. Now this situation, it just feels like your textbook Jekyll and Hyde, and it's so predictable that it's like it just, you see it coming. It's almost like a slow car accident. It hasn't been identical exactly, and there have been moments, like every game I would argue this series, that if it was to go a different way or a different result, or if a save isn't made or a goal is scored, maybe we're seeing a different result. But it's kind of been 3 somewhat identical performances under different circumstances, right? And when I say that, I don't mean environment, obviously that's the same and all those things, but different lineups, different adversity you've had to dealt with in each different game has led to the same result. So I think the good news here in all of this, which I'm sure you guys have talked about, is that home ice advantage. It comes back to Winnipeg. You're going to want to see that performance, that team, that obviously, most importantly, that result, which I don't think is all that surprising, guys. Home ice advantage is real. They talk about how home ice advantage matters in the regular season. Of course it does. Everyone wants to protect home. They talk about how playoffs, everything takes it, ratchets it up another gear. That also applies to home ice advantage. The crowds you see, guys like yourselves, other reporters, people, fans who are inside the building, they're not taking videos of game 47 of the crowd getting into it. Everyone's taking photos of it now. So that has a real impact in games. Those all play a factor in everything. So yes, I mean, I haven't seen quite this disparity between home and away from the Winnipeg Jets that it comes to mind, at least, even if you look at their playoff, their playoff experience since they've returned. But I do think that there is an explanation for that. They're also playing a St. Louis Blues team who came into the playoffs with 12 straight wins or whatever it was, or 12 straight home wins. They've now extend that to 15 or whatever the math is here, right? So that they're a good team at home. And, as I read in Mike McIntyre's piece, as I've been there, I probably have been to St. Louis more than any other arena in the NHL, but I've never been there for the playoffs. Listen to what Mike said. He says it rivals Winnipeg, right? And you have to believe that with what you see on TV. So anyways, I've taken I just had breakfast, but I've taken quite a trip to the buffet here. I'll give it back to the gentlemen that run the show.
Oh, we love it. Anytime. Look, as soon as you head to the buffet, we want you to be well fed. We want you to have a good meal at that buffet. So Hammer, you can do that anytime.
Usually I get angry by the end of those, but I wasn't. I found a healthy balance.
Yeah, exactly. Connor Hellebuyck is somebody who we obviously have to talk about. I can't speak for anybody else here, but I'm watching the game yesterday and I really couldn't believe what I was seeing. I really couldn't. I realized that he struggled in games 3 and 4 in St. Louis, but the epic collapse that we've seen from Hellebuyck, and yes, the Jets weren't good enough. Like we broke it down on last night's post-game show, so we don't have to go goal by goal, but certainly the Braden Shen goal was not a good goal. And I think you would agree that Hellebuyck has to be better. What's your confidence level? What's your angst level, Hammer, in Hellebuyck right now? Because I almost think, like to Drew's point, this series has been so Jekyll and Hyde, with the Jets playing well at home and then going to St. Louis and just absolutely putting up stinkers. Like, it's almost like you throw all the logic out and you just remind yourself, he's a Vezina winning goaltender. It's going to be fine. They're going to be at home. They're going to win this. And then we're just going to move on to round 2. But what are your thoughts overall on Hellebuyck?
I think I share the same sentiment as pretty much everybody who's watched this series. I mean, I don't know if would go into this game 7 here with a whole ton of confidence in what I've seen, but at the same time, I mean, he's Connor Hellebuyck. He still I think earns the benefit of the doubt to some degree. I mean, the thing too is it's the lack of confidence, as well as, this narrative around this series, man. Like, you can tell, like, the tension has gotten into the fan base. I mean, this is the narratives around this series are hilarious and predictable. Like, When the Jets won the first 2 games, it was like, look at what the Dallas and Avs are doing. They're battling to 7 games. This is perfect. We were talking about like what the Jets were going to do with their off time after they went 4 straight. And then when they lost 2 games in St. Louis, it was like, this team's garbage, right? Like there's no point in having them. They might as well just give up now. And here we are in the game 7. I just, I know this question's about Connor Hellebuck, but as much as the focus is on him and he certainly needs to be better, it's a collective group. I mean, it wasn't Connor Hellebuck that was riding them to the President's Trophy. In fact, the narrative around it was that this team was playing effective hockey in front of him. And of course he was making the saves, but it was a collective group effort for why they ended where they ended in the regular season and why they had so much success. So if you're going to have success in the playoffs, yes, you'd like to lean on what will be a Shirley Vezina winning goalie and potentially a Hart Trophy winner as well to drag you through the tough times. Unfortunately, you're not getting that. So everyone needs to step up. Everybody needs to play their role. The problem is, guys, is they're out too many guys and there's too many key role players that aren't playing their roles. Like, I'm not trying to shift away from Connor Hellebuck because I certainly know he's the headliner here. And to answer the question, absolutely, he needs to be better. He needs to be the best player on the ice for the Winnipeg Jets for them to move into the next round of the playoffs with any kind of confidence, because those storylines, win or lose, are going to continue to follow them. This wasn't an easy series, regardless of what happens in game 7. So, obviously he needs to be better, but, where's Adam Lowry? Like, is he even playing? Like, I mean, he must be dealing with something significant, because in those situations where the Winnipeg Jets are down by it was 5-1 going into that third period, that's when you see number 17 driving people through the boards. When it got into the, after the whistle stuff, it was guys like Tanev who were face washing guys. And, it's like, and Josh Morrissey, I mean, this has been a very physical series. I'm not excusing these guys, and I'm also not, ripping them. This is the reality of tough kind of playoff hockey, but it just seems like the Jets are really reeling right now. You can see it in the emotion of Scott Arniel. That's kind of telling to me. Like, the guy's on the verge of lip quivers every time he gets a post-game question. Like, it's just, he's either getting dealt bad news after bad news after bad news, or he knows the weight in which his team is dealing with right now. And the thing I'll say about Connor Hellebuck, and I know, I don't know if you guys have debated this or whatever, but come on, man, return to the bench. You know what I mean? Like, be with your team. Like,
come on.
Look, man.
Jeff, he never goes to the bench.
Look, okay, make it a difference then. Make that the powerful moment and come back, man. Be with your team. What are you doing? Sitting and watching tape all third period, sulking about your game? Like, or are you working through things? I don't know, man. I get what you're saying. I'm not saying that. Here's the thing. I'm not suggesting that him not returning to the bench is a negative thing, that it's having a negative cost on the team. What I would argue is the benefit of Connor Hellebuck coming back, letting guys play for him, not being back behind the scenes. I know it's a thing that's heavily debated. And again, I don't think it's costing the Jets anything in this series. It's just something personally, one man's opinion, I'd like to see out of a guy who knows that it's going to take the entire team to pull this rope. Be with your team.
We like men with opinions, Jeff. That's not a problem on this show. So you're always welcome to bring
and women.
Well, of course, yeah. We have both on this show. But although someone did have a good comment, Jeff, when you said there's no better place to be on a Saturday morning, someone did say you're probably lying. This is probably the second favorite place for you. Your first best place, of course, would be at a garage sale.
Dude, and they just started this weekend. There's one out, and there's a community one out this weekend, but I promised a friend I would do something after this show. So I made that commitment before I realized, and stupid me, because this is almost late. May is kind of the key point, or the almost like the marquee moment, because everybody's getting rid of their stuff early on. They want to enjoy the summer. It kind of, I don't say it peters out, but this is kind of like a big weekend. So
Jeff,
it's usually
I have a commitment I'll make to you right now. I think free weekend is coming up in a couple of weeks.
Not the same thing. Not the same thing.
If you want to come to my house and rifle through my crap, you're more than welcome to do it.
Here's the thing. There's some rules. It's like there's a culture involved here, man. Like, this is like you're messing with two different cultures here. Yeah. Like, there are people who do free weekend. The problem with free weekend is you got to get up at like 3 a.m. Whereas like garage sales, now people have become more sophisticated these days. they usually start around 9. You'll have people who are there at like 8:45, right? And people are setting up. I mean, I'm not that person. I'm not that crazy. But there are some rules and regulations I like to follow in getting my junk. Thank you very much.
My favorite is on free weekend when you see people with like big trucks and the entire back of the truck is filled up with
That's
stuff.
what I mean. Yeah, and
like
it's
chairs
filled by,
and
it's filled by
desks.
8:15. You know, it's
That's
like
fine.
it's
If they
yeah.
want my crap that I don't want,
Perfect,
I want one person to show up, take all my crap, and leave.
Here's the other thing too. I don't need it. Maybe I do, but there's also the personal interaction of garage sailing. That's nice. There's people who usually put on garage sales are pretty down to earth people. People who go to garage sales are usually, so there's a lot of conversation, a lot of camaraderie. That fills a bit of a
and it's the thrill of the hunt, right, Hammer? Like that's a big part of it.
The thrill to find, as you're just that's top of the list. Never mind, and then when you walk over, you're super composed, but your heart rate's at about 165, and it's got a $2.50 sticker on $2.50 sticker on it, and it's worth about $100. And you go, would you take a toonie? You tell me what's, game 7s are pretty thrilling, but you walk through that situation and you tell me if it's any different.
I knew when I started down this road that this was going to.
Sorry guys, I guess we're talking about hockey too.
That's okay, Jeff. Although I would suggest that maybe you start your own YouTube channel with a garage
it's
sailing.
It's been discussed. It's been discussed. From my paper years ago to my own thoughts, but I'm less consistent than I've ever been, so I don't want to commit to something that I can't fulfill, especially if it goes super popular and I become a millionaire out of it. I'm just not ready for that,
Okay, fair enough.
Fame and fortune.
Yeah.
Well,
exactly.
let's focus on what you are, which is a sports journalist as of right now, and continuing the focus on these Winnipeg Jets. And we've talked about Connor Hellebuyck. No, I'm the one who started the divergence.
Dave's the one who took us off the rails.
Yeah. But that's paying homage to our chat who brought that up. I thought that was a good comment. So but let's focusing back on the Jets. I mean, there's so many storylines, right? We talked about Connor Hellebuyck, talked about the Jets playing better in front of him. What do you put the percentage of Mark Scheifele playing? And again, I'm not asking you to diagnose it. We've said that
0%.
Wow.
Yeah,
really?
Zero. I mean, I think what everyone's kind of talking around and not saying is the obvious, whether he's in concussion protocol. I'll tell you this: if he's not in concussion protocol, your coach is telling you he's not in concussion protocol. You know what I mean? Like it's usually a pretty easy no. Now, no one wants to be that person. It's playoffs, it's whatever. But I mean, I just don't see it. Like, I mean, I see the 2 hits that he took. There's other hits that he's taken, and you look at him get right back up after that first hit. The second hit was even heavier, in my opinion, even though he knew it was coming and tried to deliver his opportunity to be part of that hit. But like, that's where I think it is. I mean, I just, not being able to get on the flights, not being able to be there for support, like those are, tiny indicators. Who knows it? And the thing is, you be quiet about that stuff because it's the playoffs. And who knows what you do behind, maybe it's not quite a full, maybe it's just a precautionary, thing or whatever, right? So you don't want to kind of play your hand, and especially when you're dealing with those kind of injuries. A lot of it deals with days of rest and requirements. Different studies require different things. And anyway, so I wouldn't be, I think I wouldn't be all that confident that Mark Scheifele is going to be ready for Game 7.
I would agree with Jeff. Jeff Hamilton of the Winnipeg Free Press is our guest this morning on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show, talking about Game 7 between the Jets and the Blues that goes tomorrow night. The coaching matchup, Jeff. Scott Arniel, his first ever playoff victory, obviously first playoff games as a head coach. Jim Montgomery, a grizzled veteran to some extent, a lot more games, a lot more experience behind the bench. How do you think both coaches have done in terms of the coaching aspect of the game and the series so far?
Yeah, I think they've done a really good job, both of them. I think, again, what the Jets have been dealing with as far as injuries and, unexpected movement and whatnot. And especially when you look at the last game, right, with how many changes there were on the lines, could Arniel do a better job on the road? Yeah, everybody could do a better job on the road. I think it's interesting about coaching is when your team gets it done, when your team executes what your game plan is and it works. You're seen as a brilliant coach, and when it doesn't work out, obviously it's the exact opposite, which kind of makes sense. But my point in saying that is, while the coaches have an impact and they're there to set the team up for success and identify different things that they're seeing from the opponent from game to game. It is really on the players to execute that and to again execute that plan. And depending on who you have at your disposal, or maybe perhaps more importantly, who you don't have, that's where the real game of chess comes into play. And so I think they've done a really good job. I thought it was interesting in the Kenny and Rennie show last night, Sean Reynolds talking about just how he believes it's an easier situation for the losing team to game plan going into the next game, because if you're the winning team, you would think that, well, what you did this game worked, right? So you would kind of continue on with that game plan and whatever. And whereas if you're in this case, the Jets, you can identify what didn't work and try to change things up and really throw a curveball potentially at your opponent, what would obviously be the deciding game. So
let me stop you there for a second.
Yeah.
Are there that many adjustments to be made at this point, though? I mean, it seems like it's more about execution than adjustments after you're into game.
Well, I would make the argument there will be significant adjustments in this game, because I think you didn't like what you saw with life without Mark Scheifele. So like now it's like, you know, do you want to go back with Vlad Namestnikov? Like, it was a really great story when you know in game 5, obviously, for him to take over that role and Mark Scheifele mid game and produce what he did at home. Do you go back to that because it was so well done that game but not so much this? Like, I mean, who's your second line center? Do you not want to reunite? Do you not want to reunite the Adam Lowry line and try to shut down that Thomas line again? You know, is that a priority for you? And how does that change? Do you try to get Alex Iafallo mixed up into the top 6 again? And does that mean moving, Cole Perfetti over to center? Because this idea that like bringing in Brandon Yeager, over like, suggesting that he might be ready ahead of a Cole Perfetti is kind of ridiculous, right? So like, is that at play? I don't think you want to do you want to make too many moves, but I do think there's, then there's the fourth line. Like, I thought it was an interesting, situation to bring up Dominique Toninato. I didn't necessarily disagree with it. I think you get a lot of, I think with Dominique Toninato, you know exactly what you get, which is odd in this situation, because he obviously of the amount of time he spent on the, with the Moose this year, but you do know he's going to be physical. He's going to finish the play. Is he going to be in the lineup this game? Probably not, thanks to the results. So who do you decide to bring back into the lineup? I'm not saying there's going to be a ton of system things, but I do think when you do incorporate the amount of line changes that could potentially happen, given what the lineup you had in game 6, yeah, I think there maybe is some opportunity there to try to figure out or identify gaps in your game against what has been obviously a dominant performance from St. Louis in game 6.
Absolutely. And Hammer, what have you liked from Ehlers and Velarde? Obviously, Velarde's been back for a couple games. Ehlers has been back for only one game, so no points for those guys. But obviously, we're not going to put too much stock into 1 or 2 games. But obviously, there would be no time better than tomorrow in game 7 for these guys to get themselves on the score sheet, especially with 55 out of the lineup. Yeah,
and to that point, I'll make the argument that perhaps, despite their different timelines, they might be finding their games at the perfect time. Like when Gabriel Velarde came in for his first game, it was very evident that the legs might be there, but the hands and eyes weren't there. Like he wasn't comfortable around the net. He wasn't comfortable dishing passes. There was a handful of giveaways, particularly around the half boards in the offensive zone. He didn't look confident. He looked like a guy who hadn't played a game in 6 weeks. And he's obviously a guy that takes a couple games to get going. I don't think game 6 was a great opportunity for him to get going and to build off that first game because of what was occurring with the rest of the team and what the Blues were doing to the Winnipeg Jets. So then you look at Nikolai Ehlers, and I thought he was probably one of the Jets' best forwards in the game, yesterday. So, he wasn't awesome. He wasn't whatever, but he was generating opportunities. He was shooting. I don't think anybody was all that good, but for a guy who was in his first game back, I thought it was a great first step to kind of get back into the mix of things. So that's my point. Like maybe in game 7 here, Velarde builds off his first 2 games, feels more comfortable, and then Nikolai Ehlers can build off what he was able to do in game 6. And if that can happen, I mean, you can make the argument that needs to happen for this team to have the success and to move on to the next round. But I guess we'll have to wait and figure that out.
That's sorry, Dave's going to ask a question here, but that's the way I look at it, Hammer. Like those guys have to contribute, right? Like, we talked all about the first 4 games of the series, no Velarde, no Ehlers. Well, these guys are back now and Scheifele's out. So this is it, right? Like there's no game 8. Like these guys got to step up tomorrow.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, Jeff, I know that Luke Shen has been brought in to add size, physicality, but and of course playoff experience, Stanley Cup playoff experience. It's something that nobody else on this team has. But it just seems like he's being exposed on the road. And when you look at what Colin Miller did when he was kind of pushed into service, is there not I mean, one of the things we've talked about is the advantage of home ice and having to be able to choose your matchups. But it just seems like Luke Shen is being exposed by the Blues on their home ice. Not so much in Winnipeg, but like if you look at the numbers from yesterday, they were not particularly favorable to the veteran defenseman.
So it's funny, right? Like the narratives that get built up, because you'd think Luke Shen was on his way to the All-Star game when he first got in Winnipeg, like after a week of play. Like, this is the guy exactly who they need. This is the guy who is, I think he had 5 block shots. His first, like, the media is just going to him after every game and practice, getting his insight and whatever. And then you watch last game, and to be quite frank with you, he looked like he was trying to benefit the Blues.
Yeah.
He looked like he was trying to benefit his brother's team. And I know that's a pretty damning statement. I'm not suggesting he's throwing it for his brother's team, obviously, but he wasn't helping out the Winnipeg Jets at all. And so, yeah, I mean, you can say that about him, and it's easy. You can say that about Dylan DeMello. I thought Dylan DeMello had one of his worst hockey games yesterday. Like, he owned some of that. That guy gave up in the third period as far as the eye test showed. But yeah, like, I mean, I'm with you. Like, I think it's funny because obviously Logan Stanley has been kind of the lightning rod of criticism, and for good reason in some cases, but I think he brings a bit of soundness to that, that pairing almost. Like he joins in the offensive rush. He's been using his stick a lot better. Again, I'm not making a case for Logan Stanley and talking about how he should be moving up the lineup in any, by game 7. But when you look at what you saw from Luke Shen, that experience that you brought in, that experience that you're expected to lean on is supposed to work right now. Like, it's not supposed to be game 1 and 2. It's not supposed to be the exciting part where everybody's up, where everything's positive. It's supposed to be in those moments that experience is supposed to come into play when you're in the midst of a multi-goal deficit in a game that you can wrap up the series on the road. And he's supposed to be the one who's showing the way. He's the one who's supposed to look unrattled. He's the one you're supposed to look in the locker room. I'd rather have Colin Miller or anybody else for that matter in the lineup than him right now. And that's probably an indictment on, I mean, not him as a person, because I do think he's a good person and I think he's capable of it, but it's an indictment on what I think they thought they were getting and what they actually got.
If the Jets lose on tomorrow, if they lose game 7 on home ice tomorrow, what are the longer term ramifications for this loss? We know that, they, after losing in 5 last year, they talked about 10 or 15%, and they executed that 10 or 15% during the regular season. If they lose in 7 on home ice tomorrow, what is the off-season narrative?
I don't know where I want to start. I think it could have potentially devastating consequences. In the sense of, like, if they lose that game, if they get bounced out in another first round series in a year that they won the President's Trophy, in a year that many believed or truly felt that they were a Stanley Cup contender and would at least, it almost like they're having debates about whether or not getting to the Western Conference Final would be enough for the expectations of this Winnipeg Jets team. So when you use that as a lens, yeah, it would be a very disappointing end to a season. There's no arguing that. That would certainly be displayed, but we know this organization. And in this case, I don't know if I would blame them to just kind of say nothing to see here, unfortunate situation, like injuries. Like, how do you come to grips with winning the President's Trophy and then wanting to kind of take down your team? But the reality is there, if you can't get it done at this time, we are seeing clearly, and it's not like this is just another example, and it becomes more stark because of where the Winnipeg Jets are. The playoffs are a whole different animal. It's a whole different beast. So what you do in the regular season doesn't really matter. There's a reason why you don't have the Tampa Bay Lightning hanging up the President's Trophy. I mean, bad example, they're out in the first round here, but like, even like Florida, like, you have Paul Maurice talking about they don't care where they finish in the standings. You know what I mean? Like, they kind of know what it takes to get there. They know it's going to be a fight regardless of who they're playing, whether it's the first, whether it's the second wild card spot, or someone, you know, in their division who they're battling with, who's also going to be great. So like it's kind of that understanding. So that's probably the difficult part. The part when I see potentially devastating consequences, it's an interesting conversation. And I have to, it's a conversation I was having with a colleague, so I'm not going to say it's all mine here. It'll be interesting if what happens when Kyle Connor thinks of this team, if this team can't get through the first round. Kyle Connor, like, it's pretty safe. Like, I'm not calling it right now. Anything can happen, especially after the Hellebuck and Scheifele summer, if you will, where it was like those guys were pretty much gone. Like, it looks like Nikolai Ehlers won't be back with the Winnipeg Jets. And so if you're Kyle Connor and you're trying to figure out what your future is here in Winnipeg, what your next contract's going to be, Kyle Connor, you know, he likes Winnipeg. You know, he likes playing with Mark Scheifele, but he likes the most the idea of winning a championship. That's what guys sign long-term for. That's what, you know, that's why they commit. That's why Mark Scheifele committed. He believed, you know, and there's other things, obviously, influence, power within an organization, all those things, familiarity, all that stuff. But Kyle Connor is going to be looking into the future here. And if the team that has the best opportunity to win the Stanley Cup in his time is now, then if they can't get out of the first round, how confident is he going to be in where the Jets are going to be in 7 years from now, or 8 years from now, or 4 years from now, right? The Jets window is probably 2 years. So you go on some long, glorious runs, you build up the confidence, you build up the excitement, you build up the internal expectations and understanding and experience of going deep. If you constantly get, you know, edged out, first round after first round after first round, that starts coming into play about your long-term decision making. All of a sudden, Kyle Connor's 28 years old. He's he's in later 20s. How many more years is Mark Scheifele going to be good? He had a front row seat to Blake Wheeler, pretty much wheels falling off. You know what I mean? At that age. So is that going to happen to him? And is he going to have the centerman that he needs to kind of come in and be successful? I'm just saying, those are the kind of thoughts I think get magnified in the conversations when your team keeps getting bounced in the playoffs. Those things are easier to deal with when you can look at the next 2-3 years and go, this is our time to win the Stanley Cup. If the Winnipeg Jets don't win this first series this year, I don't know how confident you can say that next season and the season after that, you're going to be some Stanley Cup contender. I think that narrative flies out the window with a loss.
Jeff Hamilton of the Winnipeg Free Press, thank you so much for joining us this morning on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Strong opinions, strong takes, strong appearance, like we always expect from you, Hammer.
Always a pleasure, my friends. I just, my only regret is it couldn't go longer, but I'll let you guys take the ship, steer it as you will. I got to go take care of that earlier business I was alluding to. Thanks so much for having me on. And here's the thing. I think the Jets get it done in Game 7. I think this is, we'll end on a positive note. I think there's a lot of adversity. If they can, this is the good news. If they can dig into their toolkit and find what they need to win this game, I think it could benefit them big time in the next round, especially if they can get healthy. Anyways, that's it for me, guys. Thanks so much for having me on.
Thanks, Jeff.
Cheers, Hammer.
I was going to ask you if the Jets are going to be playing when Bombers training camp starts in about a week or so, and I guess you gave us the answer there at the end. So good to know. Jeff Hamilton of the Winnipeg Free Press. Thanks, Hammer. Have a great Saturday.
See you guys.
Let's go to break. When we come back, potential lineup changes. How would we, if we were Scott Arniel and the Jets coaching staff, deploy the troops ahead of tomorrow's Game 7?
Start Hellebuck in net.
There you go, Ezzy. Hour number 2 of the Illegal Curve Hockey Show up next.
We want to thank you for not betting with Play Now and choosing our illegal gambling sites instead.
Because we couldn't afford things like this without your money.
So much of your money.
Now you might have questions like,
Do our profits benefit your community?
No.
Or bet with Play Now, Manitoba's local legal and secure gambling site.
Dining, entertainment, parking, and convenience, all in one spot. City Place is located in the heart of downtown Winnipeg, attached to the Canada Life Center. Whether you're working, living, or out for a night in the downtown, make City Place your go-to destination before or after the fun finds you. Lunchtime, game time, anytime, visit City Place at 333 St. Mary Avenue, next to Canada Life Center. Holt Dental, the new official dentist of Illegal Curve, has a philosophy rooted in two unyielding principles: genuinely caring about patients and providing outstanding service. Being a patient of Holt Dental means more than just checkups and treatments. It's taking the time to listen and talk to each patient so they can achieve the best long-term health, functionality, and aesthetics for their teeth, mouth, and gums. Conveniently located at Grant Park Festival on Taylor Avenue, Holt Dental is dentistry of the highest quality in a comfortable and relaxed environment. For more information, visit holtdental.ca. Oh, and there's plenty of free parking at the front door, too. Celebrating its 40th year as Winnipeg's home for stand-up comedy, Rumors Restaurant and Comedy Club has recently been named Canada's top comedy club and a top 5 comedy club in North America. From birthday parties to date nights to fundraisers and everything in between, Rumors is your destination for the best and most affordable live entertainment Winnipeg has to offer. For more information on upcoming shows, Rumors' incredible promotions, and to purchase tickets, visit rumorscomedyclub.com.
At Boston Pizza, a fast lunch doesn't have to mean fast food. Now you can get a $15 lunch served in just 20 minutes, including your choice of a main, side, and drink. That's right, lunch for $15 at your local Boston Pizza.
We are back with hour number 2 of the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Drew Mandel, Dave Minuk, Ezra Ginsburg. Illegal Curve, one of the proud media sponsors of the 2025 Rady JCC Sports Dinner, coming up in about 5 weeks' time, Tuesday, June 10th. For the Viking fan in your family, if you yourself aren't a Vikings fan, a great night out with Pro Football Hall of Famers and Minnesota Vikings legends Chris Carter and John Randall, all happening at the RBC Convention Center. One of the best dinners on the calendar is coming up Tuesday, June the 10th. We will be there. We want you to be there as well. Get your tickets now, RadyJCC.com, the 51st annual Rady JCC Sports Dinner in about 5 weeks' time. Big thanks to our friends at the Rady Center. Dave Minuk, Ezra Ginsburg with you. I am your host, Drew Mandel. Game 7 tomorrow. Jets, Blues, 6 o'clock puck drop. Post-game show after the game. Pre-game show live from City Place starting at 4 o'clock. We're going to be there. We encourage you to pop on by as well. Make City Place your destination for your pre-game coverage. Talking about the game, gentlemen, Dominic Toninato came in the lineup for the Winnipeg Jets yesterday. We know Ehlers came back. What, if any, lineup changes are you expecting, or would you suggest ahead of tomorrow night's game between the Jets and the Blues? Dave, you asked Jeff about Luke Schenn and his performance or lack thereof. Do you foresee a situation where he's not in the Jets lineup tomorrow on the back end at home against St. Louis?
No, not because that's not what I would do, but because I just don't think Scott Arniel is going to make that change. I mean, and again, I'm less concerned about Luke Schenn at home, where you control the matchups, than on the road. But for whatever reason, for 2 seasons in a row, you have a steady guy like Colin Miller who is got a good shot. He plays the position well in that third pairing role. And for whatever reason, I don't know what it is. You know, Rick Bowness had the same flaw. We were talking about it last year. Like, why is Colin Miller not playing in the playoffs or not playing more when you acquired him? It's fine, you acquire guys for depth, but you know, it to me, and again, like I said, like if we're hyper focused on the third pairing of this Jets defense, then you know, it'd be one thing if it was just them, and it's not, as we've illustrated. I mean, you know, Josh Morrissey, Dylan DeMello have to be better. Dylan Sandberg and Neil Pionk have to be better. I just think that for whatever reason, that pairing got very badly exposed last night in the game against St. Louis. And so if it was me, if it was on the road, I wouldn't be playing Luke Schenn. I think probably he would benefit also remember, like Luke Schenn has kind of reinvented himself, right? Like, remember, he was down in the AHL for a while, and, you know, we weren't sure, not because we wasn't really collectively on my radar, but the fact of the matter is he wasn't certain as to where his career was going to go. He's revitalized it. And I do think that there is a role for him on this team. I do think that the team played bigger with him when he joined that lineup than when he wasn't here. So I think that there was an element. And again, like I said, like, there's a lot of chatting, but like, again, like the Blues aren't afraid of playing physical. The Blues, the whole series has been physical by the St. Louis Blues. You're not intimidating them. Again, I don't think they're matching it. Like, there were opportunities for guys like Kyle Connor and Cole Perfetti to finish checks yesterday. The Blues are doing it, from Nathan Walker, the smallest guy on their team, to the biggest. Those guys are finishing it. To Parayko, I guess, probably the biggest guy in the lineup. They finished their checks across the board, and the Jets aren't doing that. So I'm not planning a loss on Luke Schenn alone. I just think that he got exposed on the road. Now, again, it's a home game, and Scott Arniel hasn't shown any interest in changing that lineup. So that, to me, is probably not something that's very realistic.
Yeah, I think I'm curious to see if the Jets put Colin Miller on that third pair. Schenn hasn't been good in this series. I agree with Dave, though. Like, Schen's a solid defenseman, but I think especially when the Blues have had last change and they've got some more favorable matchups, I think the Stanley Schenn pairing has suffered. And if I'm not mistaken, I think the analytics say that Stanley and Miller are better together than Stanley and Schenn. I unfortunately don't have those numbers. I'd have to rely on my buddy Garrett Hole.
Like it's been such small samples, to that regard. It's hard to extrapolate anything out of it. But with the game being on home ice, where Scott Arniel has done a much better job and has been able to shelter the guys he needs to shelter, do you think that leaves him, to your point, Dave? You don't expect there to be a change simply because on home ice, Scott Arniel has been better able to deploy a Stanley and Schenn pairing.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Izzy.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think that it's important who's out there. I mean, yes, the third pair is not as important as the top forward line or the starting goaltender, but I mean, when you have a game like yesterday, when Schenn and DeMello, that type of play, like, again, they're not going to take Schenn out of the lineup for one play, one miscue on the fifth goal, but I think it's something to discuss for sure. Just getting away from the defense for a second, I wonder. And, I realize some people in the chat have suggested this, and I don't think it's ridiculous. Because Mark Scheifele is out of the lineup, I wonder if Morgan Barron, they do look at elevating him up the lineup. Morgan Barron, to me, has been very effective in this series. He's had 2 goals that have been taken away from him, but it's not just that. I think he's been creating offense, driving the net. He's looked fast. I wonder if he's a guy that's...
So where do you put him?
Well, I mean, you elevate him, whether it's the second line or the third line, right? Like, he's been the fourth line center, right? Like, again, Drew, it's not my job. I mean, it's not my job to figure out where to put Morgan Barron.
I don't disagree with your premise. In fact, I think that there's probably some credence to your premise, but let's talk about the forwards. Let's talk about the 12 forwards that the Jets have. We're not expecting Mark Scheifele to be an option. I mean, I would say that I would be stunned beyond words if Mark Scheifele is an option for the Jets.
It's going to be one of those Undertaker type of gifts on you, Drew, and all of a sudden you see Mark Scheifele come up.
Yeah.
I would probably put Morgan Barron between Nick Ehlers and Cole Perfetti. That's probably what I'm doing. And then you go back to Lowry, Appleton, Niederreiter, or some combination of that, right? Mason Appleton, I know he had 3 assists in game 5. I didn't like his game yesterday. And I'm not just talking about the offside on Morgan Barron's goal. I didn't think he was very effective. So I just wonder, again, we're talking about potential tweaks. And again, guys, like, you have to lay it on the line here. I realize that's a song that people don't like to hear all the time because it's very common in arenas across the NHL. But like,
it's been on the TV commercials every second commercial's been laying on the line.
That as well. Yes. It's definitely a catchy tune and borderline annoying tune. But yeah, I mean, if we're talking about guys who have played well and rewarding them by moving them up the lineup. Again, we have the Thomas comment there, saying Barron goes to 2C, Lowry 3C, Nemestikov 4th-C. I'm not sure under that who's the first line center without Mark Scheifele in the lineup, but
they're going 11. They're going 11-7. Well, hang on. Could you see an 11-7 situation for the Winnipeg Jets tomorrow? You talk about Colin Miller. You talk about the defense. That's something we saw Jim Montgomery do. I don't think the Jets did it once this year. I can't think of any circumstance where they went 11-7.
If they did,
I just don't know why. Like, why, guys, are you doing that? If you can present a reason why you're doing that, then
you get more ice time for your best players up front. That would be
Yeah,
the
but I
reason
think
to
I
me.
think those guys are getting ice time regardless. I don't know. I mean, you're asking us, Drew, and I'd say no. I don't know why you would
You know-
do that at this point. Like we said, we haven't seen it a lot this year. So again, this is Scott Arniel's job to figure this out, right? Like this is up to him. We can talk about this all day and make these suggestions, but Scott Arniel has been pretty stubborn with his lineup, right? Like how long did we see Scheifele, Velarde, Connor together, and Nemesnikov, Perfetti, Ehlers together, Matt Appleton, Lowry, Niederreiter, and obviously, like I'm just saying, right? Like, but if there's an opportunity where you want to make a significant change, this is it, right? And I think Morgan Barron getting elevated in the role is one of those changes. But again, like we talked about with the third D pairing, I mean, ultimately, this game is going to come down to a collective team effort. So we can say that, this guy should be bumped up or that guy should be bumped up or move this guy down or move this guy up. But, it doesn't matter if the Jets don't play better defensively. It's not going to matter who's on which line, as far as I'm concerned.
Dave, what about from what Ezzy just said? What are your thoughts regarding the forward lines for tomorrow? I mean, Tony Nato coming in was not something I think that any of us necessarily expected. We all would have said that Jared Anderson-Dolan has played pretty well in this series. David Gustafson, has played serviceably, certainly in this series. So what are your thoughts as to what the Jets do with regard to their forward lines tomorrow? Start with the bigger names and work your way down to the fourth line if you want.
For sure. I mean, look, obviously there's a lot of speculation nation because we don't know what's going to be. We don't know who's available, who's not available tomorrow. And we won't know, I expect, until, because it's a 6:00 start. So they may do a morning skate. We still haven't heard. We know that, like I said, there's a media availability at 1. But for me, I mean, Morgan Barron has been moving really well. And I'm here to see, I think that we know that Ehlers, Perfetti, and Lowry worked well when they were put together during the regular season. But, losing that identity line is problematic. And personally, I think Iafallo needs to be in a more prominent role. I think losing Iafallo to the fourth line is a bit of a problem. Like it's kind of a war of staying the course with a certain level of balance that you've had success with versus wanting to make too many changes. And then you see what happens when you do make those changes. So again, like I said, I could just see a swap of Morgan Barron going up to that 2C role and then having Lowry stay at the third line center. And then there's part of me that says, okay, we'll move Mason Appleton down to the fourth line and move Alex Iafallo up to that third line because I think he deserves a little bit more of a little more ice time because, and obviously, like I said, I mean, Jeff mentioned it. I kind of agree. Like you'll hope that with, I didn't think Velarde was particularly noticeable in the last couple of games. And again, I understand he had a long layoff since the game against Buffalo on that Sunday, whenever it was in March. So it was obviously a lot of time for him, but you need him to be a difference maker. You need you need Nikolai Ehlers, who's back. And again, I thought he was good last night. I give him a lot of credit because nobody expected Nikolai Ehlers to be in the lineup yesterday. None of us. Right. So
the thing about Nikolai Ehlers, sorry for a second, David, is you can't help but notice him because of the speed that he brings to the table. Yeah. So even if he's, maybe, and I thought he was good yesterday, so I don't have a problem with this game, but sometimes, he's always noticeable, even if he's not necessarily as effective as he fully is when he's fully healthy, just because the speed, and that aspect that he brings to the table, game in, game out.
Right. So again, if you're asking me, I would swap for sure Lowry and Barron because I think Barron is been effective as a center. I think his speed is noticeable, which again, it's kind of important, right? Like Lowry plays more of a plodding game. He's more methodical. And the reality is that doesn't really jive well. You've already got Perfetti, who's not particularly fast, but you need someone to kind of match Ehlers. And again, I'm not saying Barron is necessarily that fast, obviously, but I just think that there's a ability. And again, like I said, maybe you move up to 1C. Maybe you put him in that role. Maybe you give him that big body position and then you put Nemesnikov back with Ehlers and Perfetti because we know how good those guys were. So maybe if you want to make an even swap, you just have Barron go up to the first. I know it seems radical to play with Velarde and Connor and to give them some size up the middle on that first line. You have Nemesnikov go back with Perfetti and Ehlers, who were really effective throughout the course of this regular season when you were winning the President's Trophy. And then you have Lowry return. And then again, if you don't want to make change every single line, then you can leave Appleton there. Again, I just think you need more Alex Iafallo because I think he's more effective than Appleton. But if you don't want to change things up too much, Ezzy, so then you can stick with that third line and stick with the fourth line, however you like it. Again, this game is going to be won by the first top six. It's not going to be won by the bottom six.
I agree with that, and I don't think it's too much of a reach, Dave, to suggest Morgan Barron starting the first line center, right? Like, let's be honest here. Vlad Namestnikov obviously got off the schneid with a goal in Game 5, but I mean, he's not been very effective in that 2C role. So it's not like, again, we're not hurting Namestnikov's feelings here. This is about winning a hockey game, winning the most important hockey game of the year, right? And Morgan Barron's been really good. So again, we're not putting this all on Morgan Barron, like, you know, he's going to be elevated in the lineup and he's going to fix all the Jets' problems. Like, again, I hate to sound like a broken record, but it goes back to what I was saying earlier. For me, watching this team, we watch this team all year long. The Jets, if they are not playing the way they play defensively when they're effective, none of this matters because they're going to get hemmed in their own zone. They've had trouble with the Blues' physicality. We've talked about this. Obviously, they've been matching it to a certain degree, but clearly, you know, it's had real life ramifications. Please see Mark Scheifele being knocked out by that big Braden Shen hit, or the Shen-Faxa combo hit, whatever you want to call it.
Or the Kyrou hit, Ezzy.
Or the Kyrou hit, whatever.
Pick a hit.
Pick a hit. I mean, Scheifele's been targeted along with Josh Morrissey and Kyle Connor. And you know, I see a couple people, you know, talking about, you know, I still see people talking about Comrie. I mean, Comrie's not starting Game 7.
No.
Period.
No.
I don't care. I've been wrong a lot of times. It's just not happening. Is the leash going to be short for Connor Hellebuyck in Game 7? Yes. I don't think they're going to let Hellebuyck allow 3 goals and then keep him in the net in the first period, guys. But again, let's cross that bridge when we get there here. Game 7 hasn't even started yet. And I don't think anybody saw Hellebuyck being pulled 3 times, but I just wanted to get that because I see a lot of people still talking about that in the chat. Like, it's just not going to happen. That's one thing that will not happen. Can the Jets, you know, possibly put in a Colin Miller for Luke Shen? Yes, that might happen. Could, you know, Dominic Toninato, you know, come back out of the lineup and then you put David Gustafsson in? Yeah, I tend to think that they're going to stick with Toninato on the fourth line. But Morgan Barron is a very interesting one because if there's one player, I mean, there's been a lot of players who you could point to and you could say they need more out of, whether that's Adam Lowry, whether that's Namestnikov, whether that's even a Nino Niederreiter, even though he scored yesterday. If there's one guy that's kind of been the biggest bright spot, it's probably been Morgan Barron in the forward group.
And just to quickly respond to some of the things I'm seeing in the chat. Again, Braden Yager, great story. He, had a good season with Lethbridge. Obviously, well, didn't start with Lethbridge, but he got traded to Lethbridge and had a real good season. They got eliminated in the Eastern Conference Finals by a juggernaut Medicine Hat team. And I wasn't certain he was going to be recalled. He was recalled, sure enough, skating at the Hockey for All Center with the Black Aces. But, you know, again, folks, you got to remember, it's much like the 2015 playoffs for the Winnipeg Jets when they were against the Ducks, and they recalled a first-round pick from Halifax, Ezzy, in Nikolai Ehlers, and he came up and he didn't play, but he, of course, was there to observe and to soak up the atmosphere. So Braden Yager was not in St. Louis yesterday. He was with the taxi squad out at Hockey for All Center, which is, I suspect, where he remains. I mean, again, he may be especially since doesn't sound like they're skating. It's just a media availability. We'll see if they skate at 1:00. But again, I don't anticipate that Braden Yager is going to make his NHL and playoff debut in a Game 7. Just to throw that out there, because some people are saying it. And again, like I said, I'm not trying to poo-poo your idea, but the Jets have lived and died with the team that they've got, and they're probably going to do so in Game 7.
Yeah, I agree with you wholeheartedly on that one. I mean, to me, it's just a function of you do whatever it's going to take to get you where you need to be. And I wonder if the Jets, I look back at that second period before the disaster struck, before they fell apart, because I really thought they played some of the best, 10-minute stretch, especially on the road.
Yeah,
that they did, the Ehlers 2 chances, the Morrissey and the Mesnikov give and go. The Jets were the better of the two teams before they absolutely imploded. And I wonder how much of that they can translate into Game 7. I know you're always looking for little things you can glean onto. You're trying to grab this and grab from there and just say, okay, look, this is good. We did this. We need to do that more.
Specialty teams, Drew, they killed off all 6 Blues power plays.
And they scored 2
and they scored twice.
goals.
So that's also something. Again, like, Yeah, I think you have to grasp on to some of these things, right? Because you're definitely not grasping on to how you played defensively in that second period. I mean, that's not something you're grasping onto. So I think
and I wonder how much of it is how much the Jets can take in that it was they talked about it last night, that it was more self-inflicted than it was anything that St. Louis did so much better than the Jets were doing. That it wasn't that St. Louis, elevated and as a result, took control of the game. It was more so that the Jets imploded, allowing St. Louis to take control of the game. I wonder if that is not a topic of conversation within the dressing room when they gather to meet today, and they're going to have meetings and they're going to talk about it and they're going to work through the negativity and the lingering effects and the emotions and everything else to get geared up for tomorrow night. I wonder how much of that isn't the conversation that they're all having within the dressing room today and tomorrow ahead of Game 7.
For sure, guys. I think, if you're head coach Scott Arniel, or if you're Dean Chenoweth, or if you're Davis Payne, Marty Johnston, the entire coaching staff, Wade Flaherty, you got to throw him in there as well. Matt Prefontaine, he almost threw the flag yesterday on that first period challenge and decided that he didn't want to. I mean, I think that's what you're doing. You're grasping on to the positive, and you're saying, look, this game was close. We were better. We were outplaying the Blues in the second period, and then everything fell apart. It was really a bad, 5 or 6 minutes that cost us the hockey game. We all agreed, guys, like whether it was Braden Shen's goal that made it 3-1 or whether it was Cam Fowler's goal that made it 4-1, it was certainly over after it was 5-1. I don't think anybody was expecting the Jets to score 4 goals on Jordan Binnington after that point of the game, right? So I think you are looking to that and you're saying, look, we did a pretty good job shutting down the Blues power play. And most importantly, we've taken care of business in the 3 home games that have already taken place in the series, right? So I think absolutely, Drew, that you have to embrace those positives. You have to highlight them, and you have to have the confidence. Like you just have to, right, guys? Like, look, we've been covering this team every single year since they came back in 2011. I think you guys would agree that the angst levels, I should say, amongst Jets fans are maybe higher than they've ever been. And they were high last year in the Jets Avalanche series, the Jets Vegas series. Obviously, the Jets won the first game, similar to last year. But I think this year, like Dave has pointed out so many times, this year has been different. When you have that President's Trophy and your name is on it, and you were first for the majority of the year, the expectations are higher. So there's definitely a lot of anxiety and angst among Jets fans right now. But at the end of the day, they're going to have to play the game. And, we're not going to sell any false hope or anything like that. I think the Jets can win. But again, it's not what I think or what Jets fans think or what Drew thinks or what Dave thinks. The Jets players have got to elevate their game and come through with one of their best performances of the year. And they've done that. We've seen that in the regular season. They got to do it now in the playoffs.
Well, frankly, we saw it in Game 5. They came in with all these questions after the 2 terrible losses in Games 3 and 4 were very similar to what we're talking about today. The only difference is it's now a best-of-1 series, and they had a very good performance in Game 5. Connor Hellebuyck made an incredible paddle save on a 2-on-1 shorthanded that kept the game tied. At the same time, he gave away a bad goal to Jimmy Snuggerud that tied the game up after the Jets had a 2-1 lead. But the Jets controlled the front of the net. They know what the MO needs to be. They know what the game needs to look like. It's just a matter of now who can execute it. It's been a rock'em sock'em series like none other of the 8 first-round series so far. It's only fitting that it'll be the last series to end, and it'll be curious to see who is successfully going on to round number 2. When we come back, Jesse Granger of The Athletic is going to join us. He covers the Vegas Golden Knights. We know they're going on to round 2 to face the Edmonton Oilers. He also spends a lot of time looking at goaltending, including one Mr. Connor Hellebuyck. We talk with Jesse next about what he's seeing from Connor Hellebuyck and where the Winnipeg Jets can go from there. Saturday morning, the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Drew Mandel, Dave Minuk, Ezra Ginsburg. Don't go anywhere. More Jets talk ahead. Bottom of hour number 2. Welcome back to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Drew Mindell, Dave Minuk, Ezra Ginsburg with you. We're pleased to welcome back to the program our very good friend, Jesse Granger. Jesse, of course, covers the Vegas Golden Knights for The Athletic. He's also spent a lot of time this season on goaltending, and goaltending has certainly been a hot button issue here in Winnipeg, given the struggles of Connor Hellebuyck, at least the road struggles of Connor Hellebuyck so far through the 6 games of the Jets and the Blues. Jesse, good morning. Thanks so much for joining us. How are things?
Yeah, good morning, guys. Thanks for having me. I feel like I've kind of taken on the beat of goaltending, and it's almost more of my job than Vegas Golden Knights at this point. And specifically this year, I feel like I'm almost the Connor Hellebuyck beat writer because partially because of just how amazing he was during the regular season, how obviously polarizing his play has been in the playoffs, and I just like working with Marat. So any excuse I can get to work with Marat is always a good one.
That we agree with that wholeheartedly. No question about that. It's sort of funny, Jesse, and we'll get into the Hellebuyck ones, but the 3 Vezina goalies, Hellebuyck, Vasilevsky, Darcy Kemper, none of the 3 really, have had a shining moment so far in these playoffs. 2 of the 3 are already eliminated in Vasilevsky and Kemper. Hellebuyck is going to come down to Game 7. It just goes to show you that how sort of voodoo goaltending really can be throughout the course. Once the playoffs flip and it's no longer the regular season.
Yeah, and one of the other goalies that had a rough, at least statistically, playoffs is the other most recent winner, which is Linus Ullmark. It's tough to predict, and it's the stats of goalies. I keep yelling this into the void. The stats that we keep for goalies are more indicative of the play in front of them than they are of the goalie themselves. We don't have good goaltending stats, and that's one thing I will always scream. And trust me, some of these guys have made some bad plays, and they're certainly aren't. It isn't all excused, but I do think that a lot of the stats we look at and we say, wow, this goalie hasn't been any good. It's like, well, I think those stats are more indicative of the play in front of them than the actual goalie talent.
So let's talk about the play in front of Connor Hellebuyck, because his numbers are atrocious, which, to your point, it speaks more so to what might be happening in front of him.
Jesse, even if you're talking about adjusted save percentage, that's not going to help Hellebuyck here.
Right. And like goals saved above expected. I mean, we do have numbers that quantify the quality of chances, but I still don't think they're good enough because the number one thing is the thing with goalies these days, we use shot location and how close the shot is to the goal to determine how dangerous the chance is and how likely it should have gone in. And over huge samples, there are that is somewhat valid, but I would argue that that's not even the number one determinant of how difficult a shot is. Like me personally, I play goalie in beer league. If you told me you're going to have a guy shooting right in front of you, but you're going to be set for it, you're going to be ready for it, you're going to see the shot the whole way, or you're going to get a shot from 50 feet away, but there are 8 bodies between you and the puck, and you're never going to see the shot. You don't see the release. And the models we use to determine how good a goalie's playing, that shot is easy to save. You should make that save 100% of the time, and yet you'll never make that save. It's almost an impossible save. You just have to hope it hits you. And I just don't, again, we don't have what it takes to quantify screens. I think we need a stat, and especially with the player tracking and the puck tracking, I think the amount of players between the shot and the goalie is a huge, huge deal. And I think eventually we will get those stats. But specifically when I look at Connor Hellebuyck's struggles and I look at Winnipeg, and to be fair, Tampa Bay also, I think the 2 teams that struggled to clear the defenders out of their goalies' eyes more than any team in the NHL in these playoffs were the Tampa Bay Lightning and the Winnipeg Jets. And it's no coincidence that the 2 best goalies in the world look like crap playing behind those defenses. Now, it's not all that fault. Connor has let in some shots that he absolutely should save. And I think it's a snowball. I think he's getting shots that he can't save because he doesn't see them. And then you add on top of that the narrative that no one can escape, not even Connor Hellebuyck. He's one of the most mentally resilient people I've ever seen. Not even Connor Hellebuyck can escape the narrative that he's playing poorly in the playoffs. And you combine that with the goals that are going in, and all of a sudden now you have a goalie who isn't confident, who isn't trusting his reads. And I think that because Hellebuck isn't the most physically gifted goalie, he's not doing the splits like crazy. He's not flying all over the place. Pucks aren't going to just hit him when he's not on his game. He relies on his reads so much, and his brain and that super processor up there, that's his superpower. So I think that because he doesn't play aggressively at the top of his crease and he's so reliant on his reads, that when he isn't mentally at his best and he's doubting himself and he's not trusting his reads, I think it hurts him even more than it hurts, because all goalies are hurt when they're not playing with confidence. I think it hurts Connor even more. So I think it's just a snowball that of all these things, and some of it's Connor's fault, some of it's the guys in front of him's fault. And I think that it's just created this snowball rolling down the hill, and he hasn't been able to stop it up to this point.
To your point, Jesse, you go back to about a goalie being, set and facing a shot square with, even if it's from a point blank range. I go back to the save Hellebuck made on Colton Parayko in Game 5, where Parayko was able to walk right to the hash marks, and there's nobody in between him and Hellebuck, and Hellebuck steps up, he challenges, he's set, and he makes the save on Parayko, a confident save with nobody, where he's able to see the whole puck, as opposed to some of the other ones that have been through legs or have been tipped off sticks, or there's been layers and layers and layers of traffic that look, like you say, they look bad, they look like they're from a distance, but at the same time, maybe they are a harder shot than the Parayko one that he squared up for and did so well on in Game 5.
100%. And I will say that, yes, it's partially my job as one of the goalie union members to make excuses for the goalies, but I'm not here to just make excuses for Connor Hellebuck. He needs to be better. And in the playoffs, you're going to face screens. You're going to face traffic. And that's every goalie. Now, I think Hellebuck's faced more than most, but you're going to face that, especially when you're the best goalie in the world and the other team knows. When he sees the puck, he doesn't let it in. We have to screen him. You are going to face that. And if you're going to win a Stanley Cup in your career as Connor Hellebuck, you're going to have to get good at stopping those kind of shots. So this isn't I'm not sitting here trying to put it all on the Jets defense. I'm trying to explain what's happening. And to me, that's what I see. I see a goalie that I think in the beginning, the early games specifically, there was so much traffic. And the Jets have a great defensive core, but they're not particularly big. Like Stanley is a big guy, but you look at like Morrissey, not the biggest defenseman, DeMello, Pionk, these aren't huge, big muscular defensemen that are tough to get inside on. So I think that they gave up screens early. They've gotten better as the series has gone on. But I think at that point, by the time they got better at it, Hellebuck's confidence is so shot, and he's just looking for something to get him feeling it again. And he hasn't so far. So, I mean, to the Jets' credit, they have outscored his problems to get to a Game 7. Like, I think most teams, if their goalie had these stats, they'd be done by now. The season would be over. So to Winnipeg's credit, they have found a way to win enough to keep giving him chances to find his game. Like he's had a bunch of chances to try to turn this around, and he's got another one in Game 7, and we'll see if he can do it. It's tough to have confidence in him the way he's played, but I'm telling you, like, you guys know Connor Hellebuck well. I talk to him. I talk to the people around him. If there's a person out there that can shake this off and figure it out and get it going, it's Connor Hellebuck. So we'll see if he can do it.
Well, and that's what I wanted to ask you about, Jesse. Obviously, we want to ask you about the Golden Knights Oilers series, because that's should be an epic series. And we want to, maybe also touch on the Wild Golden Knights series with you as well. But just sticking with Hellebuck, because that's what everybody wants to talk about here in Winnipeg. And, I was telling Drew and Dave on the post-game show last night, we were hoping that we would be talking to you about a big Game 6 win and, maybe a 25 save shutout for Connor Hellebuck. But unfortunately, he was pulled again. But I wanted to specifically ask you about what you mentioned earlier, that mental resilience. Like, how important is that? Because, it seems like an obvious question, but like you said, nobody had Hellebuck being pulled 3 times on the road on their bingo card, right? Like, so that's got to be a huge part of it for him to not forget the fact that he played maybe not as well as he would like in those 3 games, but he has to just put this away and make sure that he's at his top for Game 7, right?
Yeah, it's tough. Goaltending is such a mental position. And Hellebuck shows you that on a regular basis every night when he's so good during the regular season, right? Like this guy's not doing these amazing contortions with his body the way you see Shesterkin and Vasilevsky and some of these other guys doing. He's just doing movements that us 4 could do for the most part, but his brain and his super processor is so good that he is always in the right spot, and there's nowhere for the guys to shoot when they get the chance on him. And I think I compare goaltending a little bit to kicking in football in that you have a lot of time to stand there and think about things. When you're a forward or a winger or a defenseman and you're having a bad night, once you hop over the boards, everything's happening and you're dictating play and you're not really thinking about it. Whereas a goalie, you stand there in your net a lot thinking about things and trying to react to what's happening in front of you. And it's all a lot. It's a lot of thinking. It's a lot of reacting. And I think, like, I was talking to somebody last night, and it's like, if you walk in front of a bunch of people and you slip on ice and you fall and bust your ass and they all saw you, that embarrassing moment in front of 5 people and how bad you feel in that moment. Connor Hellebuyck keeps doing that over and over. And then he's got 18,000 people chanting his name, haunting him. And he's got to figure out how to do this incredibly difficult thing, play goalie in the NHL. And it's just a snowball effect, and it's really tough. And I think that there isn't a position that's more mental than goalie in hockey. And it's really tough, man. It's not an easy thing, but also at the same time, you're Connor freaking Hellebuyck. You're the best goalie in the world. Snap out of this. Start acting like it. I'm not a Jets fan, but I love Connor Hellebuyck. I love watching him play. I want to see him succeed in the playoffs. It's getting frustrating. We need him to snap out of this and become the goalie we all know he can be in the playoffs.
I feel that frustration for sure, Jesse.
Well, Jesse, and that's my question. And we're not going to look past Game 7, of course, but I will just for a brief second. So going on the premise that the Jets do happen to get through Game 7, how important for them is it that Connor Hellebuyck is Connor Hellebuyck in Game 7? Because, I mean, they can get through it like they have, which is really his one game that we kind of looked to in the series. I think was Game 3, right, Drew? And no, not Game 3. It was Game 2. Sorry.
Game 2. Where he only allowed one goal.
Yeah. Right. So you look at Game 2 and you're like, okay, well, that was Connor Hellebuyck. But the Jets have won kind of in spite of Connor Hellebuyck, especially in Game 1, and I mean, he was good in Game 5. But the point is, from your perspective, how important is it for this team, for him psychologically, to be a difference maker in the game, if they are able to move past the St. Louis Blues, to be effective in that second round series against either Colorado or Dallas?
Yeah, I mean, it gets tougher from here, right? It's the Western Conference is stacked. And if you were to get past that, then you've got Edmonton, Vegas over on the other side. Like it's going to get tougher. You're going to face better offenses. St. Louis is a good team, but they aren't the offense that any of these other teams are. And I'll answer that the way some people have reached out to me on Twitter or whatever, and they're like, should they play Comrie? I know that's insane, and my answer is, even if, and I don't believe this, but even if you told me Comrie gives them a better chance to win this next game, it doesn't matter, because the Winnipeg Jets have one chance to win the Stanley Cup, and that's Connor Hellebuyck getting it together. They aren't winning the Stanley Cup with Eric Comrie, and they aren't winning the Cup despite Connor Hellebuyck. Neither of those things are going to happen in any universe. It'll never happen. There is one way the Winnipeg Jets win the Cup, and that is Connor Hellebuyck figuring his game out and becoming himself. So, yes, it's super important. I think that they can only string this along for so long without him playing well. Eventually, you are going to need the best version of Connor Hellebuyck in order to ultimately win the whole thing. So, yes, super important. He's got to figure it out. And it's the thing is, it's so weird. Like he can go from having one of the best regular seasons we've ever seen. He's probably going to win the Hart Trophy to getting pulled every night. But it can also happen the other way. Like he could have a huge Game 7 and be awesome in that game, and all of a sudden come out of that game feeling great. And all this stuff is behind him. So we'll see. It can go both ways in the blink of an eye.
Well, so what do you want to see from Connor Hellebuyck in a Game 7 in terms of his approach and his mindset? You know, I know you've done some great work, and it's on The Athletic and everything else about him sort of shrinking in the net when there's all the traffic in front of him. Do you want to see a different approach from Connor Hellebuyck? You know, given that, St. Louis is still going to try and do the same things they've been doing. They're going to put layers upon layers upon layers of bodies in front of them best that they can. The Jets are obviously going to try and prevent them from being able to do so. What do you want to see from Connor Hellebuyck in terms of his approach to the game tomorrow night?
That's really tough to answer. I think that just from the outside, without talking to Connor after every game, I think he's been trying to play a little differently lately, and I think it might be hurting him because he's thinking too much about it. Like he's thinking, "Oh, I need to get to the top of my crease," when that's not normally something he would do. And maybe the best thing for him is to just not think, just go out there and play hockey. Just forget all of this, forget what they've been doing to you, forget all the screen goals and how they've happened, and forget trying to play in a different way to make up for what's happening, and maybe just go out there and play hockey and don't think about it and just try to stop the puck. Don't think about anything else other than do what you normally would do to stop the puck and hope that that's good enough. I think that, and maybe that's not the answer, but it's a really tough thing. And I was saying this the other night, it's like, if there was an easy answer, like everybody's kind of been poking fun at Connor Hellebuyck saying, I study goaltending more than anyone on earth. But the thing is, it's so true. Like anyone that knows Connor Hellebuyck knows that that statement is 100% true. He is a crazy person when it comes to examining and studying the goaltending position. I feel like if there was an easy answer out there, if there's someone on earth that could find that answer, it's Connor Hellebuyck. So that tells me there is no easy answer. There isn't a right answer to this. And I would trust whatever he thinks. But like I said, I think that maybe instead of trying to play a different way, trying to match up to what the Blues are doing, just go out there and be Connor Hellebuyck and hope that that's enough.
Absolutely. And like you mentioned, Jesse, he might have his PhD in goaltending, but I think Jets fans are hoping that he also has his PhD in psychology because, like you said, the goaltending position is so mental, right? But obviously, we could continue talking about Connor Hellebuyck, though. I'm fascinated by what the Golden Knights did in the first round. Obviously, being down 2-1 to the Wild, it looked like the Wild might surprise the Golden Knights, but now the Golden Knights and the Oilers, it's a rematch of the 2023 second round series, which, of course, the Golden Knights won in 6 games, right? Like, just sticking with goaltending, I mean, obviously, we could break down the forwards and defense and special teams and everything like that as well. But I mean, I'm looking at this series and just saying this is a huge advantage in goal for the Golden Knights. I know Adin Hill, he had his ups and downs in the first round against the Wild, but it looks like it's going to be Calvin Pickard or die here because Stuart Skinner obviously wasn't very good in round 1. But is that something that for you that's a key looking ahead to this round 2 matchup that the Golden Knights are going to be able to exploit Calvin Pickard in net?
Yeah, I mean, on paper, that's by far their biggest advantage. I think this is 2 evenly matched teams that goaltending, on paper at least, should be heavily in Vegas's favor. Adin Hill started out a little rough. He wasn't great for the first half of that series against Minnesota, but he got better as it went on. And he had his best game in Game 6 to close the Wild out. So he's feeling good about his game. He's making some big saves. He is a playoff performer. Like when you look at over his career, the first time he got in the playoffs obviously was the Cup run, and he finished 3rd in Conn Smythe voting that year. He had a .932 save percentage. But even last year, much shorter run. They lost in the first round to Dallas, but he had a .931 in that series against the Stars that they lost in 7 games. So when he came out in these playoffs and struggled early on, it was very uncharacteristic, and we were kind of surprised to see him struggling the way he was. So he snapped out of it pretty quick. He's playing well. I think he loves playing the Edmonton Oilers. He's got good stats against this team, like over his career. And the challenge of trying to stop that high octane offense is just that's fun for a goalie. So I think Adin is hoping he can be the difference in this series. And one of the more interesting storylines for me as the goalie guy is like, how long will the leash be for Calvin Pickard in Edmonton? Because he obviously took over for Stuart Skinner and he's gone 4-0, whereas Skinner was 0-2. But to me, when you watch their individual play, it's not that. Like, it's like, this isn't, Calvin Pickard didn't come in and drastically outplay Stuart Skinner. I think the Oilers found their game and got better. Like Game 5, they absolutely murdered LA. I think I would have won if I was in net in that game. So Calvin Pickard is the beneficiary of, he made a couple big saves. That was the difference. I think he played about as well as Stuart Skinner, but then he made 2 extra saves. And when you're the Edmonton Oilers goalie and you've got Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl, sometimes 2 extra saves is all you need. And that's what they needed out of him, and they got it. So, and then the team found their game, and I think they would have won these last couple games probably even if Skinner was in. So to me, because those 2 goalies are so close, if suddenly you have 2 games where Pickard isn't making those 2 extra saves, I think they will turn back to Stuart Skinner at some point if Pickard falters. And the thing is, sometimes you wonder about a goalie, like once you've pulled him, like, have we just torn him to pieces? And now if we put him back in there, it's a disaster. But they did this last year, and Skinner came back and was much better when he came back. So it's always different each time around. This is now the 2nd time he's been pulled out of the playoffs. Maybe it affects him more, but I was encouraged by the way he bounced back and came back in there and obviously led them to within 1 goal of winning the Stanley Cup last year. So I don't think it's a 0 probability that we see Stuart Skinner at some point in this series, and maybe it'll help them. But obviously the Oilers are hoping they stick with 1 goalie. That would be the preferential option for this series. But yeah, it's going to be really fun. These teams do not like each other. I can remember that that series during the Golden Knights Cup run, that was the toughest series for them. It was tougher than the Cup final against the Panthers. It was tougher than the Stars in the conference final. And I remember the look on the players' faces after they won up in Game 6 in Edmonton, just the satisfaction, because there was so much animosity, and like the Pietrangelo slash on Draisaitl that ended in a suspension, and things got really physical and really heated between those teams at the end of that series. So when you beat that team, you obviously are pumped. And I hope, as a sports writer that loves the dramatics and loves the storylines, I hope that some of that hatred and animosity has carried over. These two teams are obviously battling in the Pacific Division every year. They know they're going to have to go through each other to get to what they ultimately want. So this is kind of, now that the Sharks have faded into the abyss, this is kind of the Golden Knights' biggest rivalry. So I'm really looking forward to that aspect of it.
Well, Jesse, we have to ask you, you're talking about storylines and great goaltending storylines. Nothing better than Marc-Andre Fleury being able to, I'm sure he would say preferably to be into the second round with the Minnesota Wild, but ending his career, a great run. You obviously covered him when he was with Vegas, and for him to, it's funny how you talk about teams disliking each other. I don't know that the fan bases of Vegas and Minnesota were so fond of each other, but I know that Marc-Andre Fleury was getting cheers from the fans when during the handshake line and that sort of thing. So what did his career mean? And maybe, speak about having covered him for a few years in Vegas.
Yeah, it was an honor to have covered Fleury as long as I did. Best combination of player and person that there will ever be in the NHL, I think. He was an amazing player and an even better person. And the thing that stands out to me is I'm covering this first round series against Vegas and Minnesota, and you go to T-Mobile Arena and you look around as the fans are filing in, and the number one most common jersey you'll see every game is the 29. It's not Jack Eichel, it's not Mark Stone, it's not William Karlsson. It's still the 29 Fleury jersey. They're still the most popular jersey you'll see. Then we fly up to Minnesota, and you're walking into XL Energy Center, and you look around, and he's only been there for a couple years, and it's mostly been in the twilight of his career. But the number one jersey you see, without a doubt, is Marc-Andre Fleury. So it's like, how many playoff series will you cover where both arenas are filled with jerseys of the backup goalie that isn't even playing in the series? It's pretty amazing. That dude is as likable as you'll find, and for good reason. He was awesome. Coolest thing I'll ever do, probably covering sports, was got to go up to his hometown in Sorel, Tracy, Quebec, small little French-speaking town up there, and it was amazing. Got to live with his childhood goalie coach for a couple days, and got to go to all the rinks that he grew up playing at, and wrote a really cool emotional piece on just kind of where Marc-Andre Fleury came from. That was my favorite story I've ever written. He was a joy to cover, a joy to watch. He plays the position in a way that we will never see another goalie do it, because he's kind of the last of that generation of goalies with flair and style and windmill glove saves every time. And it's definitely become a more technically precise position. And while that is more effective, it's not as much fun to watch. So we're going to miss Fleury in a lot of ways.
Jesse Granger of The Athletic. If circumstances work out and the Jets and the Golden Knights keep moving on, we'll see you in Winnipeg for another Illegal Curve sandwich like we did last time a couple years ago. Looking forward to that, hopefully, Jesse. Thanks so much for joining us this morning. Always appreciate your time and insight. Great appearance this morning here on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Our pleasure.
Cheers, Jesse.
Take care. There he goes, Jesse Granger. Great guy. Does a great job covering the goaltending and the Golden Knights for our friends at The Athletic.
And we appreciate him getting up early. It's only 9:00 in Vegas, Drew.
That's true. It's a couple hours.
8:55, whatever.
8:55. You're right about that. Okay, so let's go quickly through the recap of what's happening tomorrow. Again, 4:00 until 5:30 tomorrow, the Illegal Curve pregame show. It'll be live here, of course, on our YouTube channel, but it'll also be live on location downtown City Place, second floor, the food court. Look for the giant Illegal Curve poster. Look for Dave. Look for Ezzy. Look for myself. Look for producer Tim. We are going to be there breaking down everything to do with Game 7, 4 until 5:30. Then, of course, Game 7, that'll be a 6:00 or so puck drop. Following the game, the Illegal Curve post-game show. So let's say that's going to be 9:00, maybe somewhere in that vicinity. Be sure to be back here and join us for that. So tomorrow, it's an epic day. It's a historic day. Never before has there been a Game 7 at the NHL level being played in Winnipeg. We're looking forward to being a huge part of it, and we're looking forward to you being there alongside us as well. The winner of tomorrow's Game 7 between the Jets and the Blues will face the winner of tonight's Game 7 between the Avs and the Stars. Who wins between the Avs and the Stars? Ezzy, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm prepared to answer that question.
I'm putting you on the spot. You got to answer it.
Yeah, the series is so up and down. You know what? I think Colorado would be a tougher test for the Jets. I'm going to say Dallas wins tonight.
I'm so impressed with how Dallas has played in this series, given their absences, given no Robertson and no Heiskanen, given what they've been able to do against the Colorado Avalanche and take it to a Game 7. I've been tremendously impressed, almost as impressed of any performance I've seen so far in the first round of the playoffs. That's how good Dallas has been in my eyes. Dave, same question to you, by the way.
I'm feeling Colorado. I just think that they've been, they've got a little momentum from that last game, and I just think that Colorado ends up taking it. But I mean, let's put it this way: it's a toss-up. I wouldn't be shocked if we were talking about a Dallas second round. So, I'm going to go with Colorado because you're asking me. But I mean, I'm not seeing that in any significant confidence.
Well, of the teams left in the Stanley Cup playoffs, including the Blues and the Jets and the Avs and the Stars, who to you right now is your Stanley Cup favorite? Given what you've seen so far, who do you think has been the best team that you've seen so far in either the East or the West at this point? After round one in the East has been concluded, round one in the West is almost concluded. Who to you is sort of standing out the most of all the teams?
It's a good question. I mean, so far, based on the first round, I might say Florida, to be honest with you.
I think Florida as well.
I mean, I hate to say it, right? Because defending Cup champs and they're not in the Western Conference, but this Florida Panthers team, with the addition of Brad Marchand, obviously, like they're just built for the playoffs. Like they're so strong up the middle, obviously strong in goal. Aaron Ekblad is back now after his performance-enhancing drug suspension, right? So,
and then his supplemental discipline suspension on top of that.
It's true. Yeah, it is pretty funny that he was out for 20 games and then he was out again. But yeah, I mean, Florida for sure. I mean, Carolina, I still have question marks. I think Carolina Washington is going to be a great series. I don't have a lot of confidence. In picking either Carolina or Washington in that series. I think it'll probably be a 6 or 7 gamer. I think there's a good chance, guys, that whoever emerges out of the Central could go all the way and win the Cup as well. Like, I think it's wide open, Dave. I really do.
Sorry, Dave. I think that the East is so much easier to get out of than the West. And I assume it's going to be Florida that comes out of the East because I think they're the best team in the East. Yeah. I think that they're going to have such a relatively unscathed time. The lack of physicality out of the East compared to the war zone that is the West is going to lead to me that I think Florida is in the driver's seat to repeat as the Stanley Cup champions. That's obviously, small sample size and everything else, but that's how I'm seeing it so far, Dave.
Yeah, I think I would agree with both of you. I mean, I like Carolina, but again, the goaltending kind of is the question mark there, which it always seems to be, but we'll see if they can do that in spite of the goaltending. But for now, Florida is the one. I mean, you hear the way the Tampa Bay players talked about Florida after the series concluded and the amount of, not necessarily reverence, but how impressed they were by how complete Florida played.
They dismantled Tampa Bay, and Tampa Bay's a damn good hockey team.
That's what I mean. So from that perspective, it to me, it just seems like Florida would be, and like you said, the path is easier in the East than it is in the West. It's not nearly that same level of physicality. So, I mean, we've seen that be the reality for Winnipeg when they had nothing left in the tank against Vegas in 17-18. We'll see if that happens with one of these teams again. But yeah, I mean, I think the only good news for the Jets is that after this series, you won't have to worry about playing another team as physical as the St. Louis Blues. So maybe if you can get through, at least you can go back to trying to play a little less that style of game.
That's it for us on this Saturday morning edition of the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Big thanks to Jeff Hamilton. Big thanks to Jesse Granger. Big thanks to all of you for joining us. In case you missed any of the show, of course, the podcast will be available shortly. The instant replay is also available. We look forward to seeing everybody tomorrow for the Illegal Curve pregame show, 4:00, City Place, downtown. We're going to be there. Then the postgame show after Game 7. It's going to be an epic Sunday. Tomorrow, we're going to be there with you, lockstep, in bringing you complete and total coverage. Big thanks to all of the sponsors of this show, the pregame show, the postgame show, Illegal Curve in general, our friends at Play Now. They're the title sponsor. Holt Dental, Boston Pizza, City Place will be there tomorrow. Seagram's, the Rady JCC, and of course, Rumors Restaurant and Comedy Club. If you're looking for something to do tonight, Chad Daniels is at Rumors. 2 shows. Get some laughter into your system. To
Jeff's younger brother.
What's that? Yeah,
Jeff's younger brother.
Not quite. Break up some of that anxiety, some of those nerves you're feeling ahead of Game 7. Head to rumorscomedyclub.com to do that. Big thanks to all of you. Big thanks to my colleagues, Dave Minuk and Ezra Ginsburg. I am your host, Drew Mandel. We'll see everybody tomorrow at City Place. If it's Saturday, it's the Illegal Curve Hockey Show.
Thanks for listening to this broadcast from Illegal Curve Hockey. For more great Illegal Curve content, subscribe to the Illegal Curve YouTube channel, follow at Illegal Curve on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and visit your online home for hockey in Winnipeg, illegalcurve.com.